All right, we're here today for a Veterans History Project interview with John H. Graham. He served in the U.S. Navy during World War II and Korea. He served aboard, during World War II, he served aboard PC Patrol Craft 1220, where he was involved mostly in screening merchant ships for submarines. So I guess what I'll do is just start and ask you, how did you get involved in the military, John?
Well, that's a story. The summer before I started college at OU, my mother and I were sitting on the front porch of the house, and a friend of mine, a year older, who lived down a little hill, and came walking up, and I thought he was going to turn and go toward town. No, he came over to the porch and said hello to us, and proceeded to tell me about something new on the campus at the University of Oklahoma, namely the NROTC. And he said their CO had told him to look around their towns and likely people tell them about it. So when I got over there, I did. And there were 1,000 applicants and 110 got in. And so I was strictly Naval ROTC. Okay. But they commissioned thousands like me. We did not complete the full course. That was 41, and I was commissioned in very early February 44, and then went immediately on active duty.
Okay. So tell me about what was your training like, for instance?
Well, it was interesting, and I got a few honors there. I enjoyed it, so I did well. I would say it was virtually the same as it might be at Annapolis. We took all the areas and went over them, trained them, took exams. It was done in exactly the same manner as the college courses were. And there was a huge crowd of Army boys that were being trained at the same time.
Well, so once you got into the Navy and you went through your training, when did you ship out? When did you actually go?
Shipping out's interesting because I'd have to say went on active duty in February of 44, late February, about the 28th, and went first to New Orleans, which was very nice. Then down to Miami, Florida, where they had what was called the SCTC, Submarine Chaser Training Center, and I took that course. And then on D-Day, the 5th of June, when that was?
6th of June.
I was notified that I had my orders, and I thought, oh shit, they're going to send me over there to England to take up on some of these ships. Not so. I was going to a pre-commissioned vessel, just finished, in Stamford, Connecticut. And got up there, had some other delight. There were 5 officers. And I think maybe this skipper had a teeny-weeny bit of experience. But that was the way I got on the ship. I got it brand new.
And this was the patrol craft?
Patrol craft.
Describe to me what the patrol craft is. I've never heard of this before.
Oh, about 400 feet long, and 25 feet at the beam, the broadest part.
Was it comparable to a destroyer escort?
It was smaller. It was, I think, only 400 or 500 tons. And you know, a destroyer escort would be 3 times that. A destroyer would be 4 times.
Okay.
It was a neat little ship, and I enjoyed it.
So what were the capabilities of the patrol craft that you were on?
We were built to cope with submarines. Mostly we were built to find them. We had a very complete, intricate system of sonar, and we had sonar going every minute we were at sea. And we actually got a few contacts and dropped a few depth charges, but we never got anybody. I'll tell you what was most interesting of the whole thing. We were coming along, and it was a hazy day. We were going out the channel to sea to take a bunch of merchant ships down to, well, we took them to Guantanamo, Cuba. And I was off the deck. And the quartermaster said, "Good heavens, what's that?" And I thought, what? I looked at her, my Lord, yeah, just a great mass, not too far, over on our starboard side. And then as we went on. You know what it was? The Missouri.
Oh, really?
Nobody had ever heard of the Missouri. It was brand new. We got on 63. Battleship 63. Yeah. Oh, we had a lot of good times. Well, I don't want to take up all your space.
Well, no. So you said that during your time during World War II, you had a few experiences with submarines, and you dropped some depth charges.
Not any.
But you never saw any.
That's
evidence.
all I could say.
Okay.
I think it'd be appropriate to insert a remark. A very good friend of mine, recently deceased, who made admiral in the reserve, was married to the daughter of the admiral who was commander of the Navy Atlantic Coast, who told me at a party at their house, after the war, of course, that there never was a time after 1942 that we didn't know where every German submarine was.
Really?
Well, they didn't let us in on that.
Was that because of the Ultra? Was that the Ultra intercepts that we were?
I'm not sure what kind of scientific device they had to do that, but he wasn't kidding. He was true. The submarine threat was pretty well gone by the time I got there. See, early in the war, 41, 42, 43 is when they were sinking those merchant ships. But we got some protection, and they slowed down quite a bit.
I know that at one point the U.S. captured a German submarine and captured all of the, I don't know if it was the Enigma codes, all their code books, everything.
I haven't heard about that.
And that was what was used. Every time they would read the German radio signals back to Berlin,
yes,
they'd mention where they were on a grid that was in code, and we could then translate it, and we would know at any given point where these people were.
You know that we broke the Japanese code too.
I think that might have been
and never
Ultra, maybe. Or
just one after another. If it came over, we knew what it was. We had some smart guys in that area.
Boy. Yeah. So, were there any harrowing experiences whenever you were on your ship?
Not relating to the war. I remember one time I was off to the deck, had a couple of people up on the bridge with me, and it wasn't a bad day. But all of a sudden, it's sort of like a tsunami, I guess. A huge wave was as tall as our mast coming at us. And it slammed into our port side, and the ship started over. I thought, oh God, we're going to turn over. Well, I wound up hanging on to a pipe. My feet were free of the deck, and we had rolled in excess. The clinometers on a naval vessel then only went to 70 degrees. They told us in the quarterdeck that when we were at the farthest point, the clinometer hung on the needle, and we went farther. We probably went to 80 and then came back. And the fact was that our ship was remarkably stable. Destroyer, the type I was on, 3 destroyers sank in that hurricane, are stable to 55 degrees. And I'm definitely of the opinion that those PCs are stable to 85 degrees.
So at that point, that's the point of no return, they'll capsize at that point?
Oh, man. Well, you know, they had several destroyers capsized in the Pacific. And
was with
I don't know
World
what
War II,
happened.
right?
I say there were 3 destroyers sunk in that hurricane. All of them up in the northern area, off of New York and Massachusetts. Oh man, it's scary. But
So
you
was
have to
that a
take it.
hurricane-related wave then? That
Oh, this one? No.
was just a rogue wave, or
It was a rogue wave. As I say, like a tsunami. Somewhere something had happened and started this wave.
This was in the Atlantic?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'll never forget that. I was looking straight up at it.
Did you lose any men?
No. We didn't have any taken overboard, and we were all holding on to pipes up there, pipes that hold the canvas in place. This was an open bridge, and I was hanging just like I was chinning myself. Gosh. No, those little ships were great. Incidentally, we went back and they put our ship in what? Preserved, reconditioned it, preserved it to be called up again if needed. I don't think it ever was.
So, at any point during the war, were you always pretty certain that you guys were going to win the war? Was there ever any doubt?
It just never occurred to me anything else. And you can, yeah, I was sure we were.
Why do you think that was? Just because of...
Oh, we were bigger and could produce more and had more people, and England never have survived without us, that's for sure. And of course France was gone. But Winston Churchill fell in love with America and Franklin Roosevelt, something most people don't know. He came over to America several times during the war and stayed at the White House. And something else that I didn't know till I read it, Roosevelt, in total opposition to Congress, I don't know how he had the authority, but he did. He's the one who okayed that 50 destroyer gift that we sent to England. They'd never made it without that.
Was that part of the Lend-Lease Act, or
That was just a deal that Roosevelt put together. Churchill needed them, and I'm sure Roosevelt called in his naval experts, and they got together. You know, they were all old destroyers. I'm sure we didn't send them our top line new ones, but 50 destroyers made a lot of difference.
Wow.
Winston Churchill was a remarkable guy. You've heard that one, haven't you, about when he was with a couple of aides, went to this big fancy affair. They got there, and one of them went over and said, sir, your fly is open. He says, oh, don't worry, a dead bird can't fall out of the nest. That's Churchill original. God.
Well, so when you were in the Atlantic during World War II, did you have liberty at any other islands or any other nations?
Guantanamo, Cuba. That's where we took the convoys and turned them there over to destroyers to take them across the Atlantic.
So your primary range of duty was from the U.S. to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba?
Exactly. That's
Okay.
all we did.
Which is, okay, this makes sense to me, because that's why you were on a smaller ship then, because
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't imagine how you could be on a smaller ship way out in the Atlantic like
They didn't
that.
have PCs before the war. Somebody designed them or had designed them, and they built them, and their total job was to try to protect merchant ship convoys. You know, they were getting slaughtered early in the war.
So where did you escort the ships from again? Like, where did you start? Where was your origin in the U.S.?
Oh, New York.
New York? So
Yeah.
you come from New York
We
down
were
the coast?
based in Staten Island,
Okay.
and we would pick up the convoys in the channel, get together, and then when we hit the open sea, we usually had about 4 of us, 2 on each side, 1 forward and 1 aft, and went down there and then spent 5 days at Guantanamo. We weren't supposed to have liquor on board, but we did. You know what I paid for a fifth of Old Forester? $2.25. And what was the other one I liked?
Now, Old Forester, is that a Scotch?
No, that's a bourbon.
A bourbon, okay.
But what's the one everybody liked? And I loved it. It was $1.40, and I can't think of it. Can you believe that?
Well, 60 years later.
All of our stuff was all taxes, see. No taxes out there. Cigarettes were a nickel a pack aboard ship.
What were they in the U.S.?
No taxes. I think they were selling for 17, 18 cents. It was a lot less than it is now. I quit smoking by virtue of a good Lord. And when I quit in 60, I guess, they were 27 cents.
So you quit smoking 48 years ago? Good for you.
Oh, I'm proud of it, but more than proud, I'm grateful. 3 friends, one of them still alive, the other one died because he didn't quit. So he died of lung cancer because he didn't quit. The other fella quit before I did. And I thought, God, if Harry can do this, I know I need to quit. So I just settled down and I sweated it for about 4 or 5 days, and then gradually got easier. After a week, I asked my wife, I said, see anything different about me? She says, no. Did you get a haircut? And I said a couple of pretty nasty words. I haven't had a cigarette for a week. That's right, you haven't. I said, gosh, I'd have thought the smell. She said, it never bothered me. Oh, wives or something else. I later, when I was group commander here at the local Naval Reserve, they issued from the Navy Department on about a semi-annual basis ready reserve assignments. In case of a sudden crisis, you would proceed on whatever your ready reserve designation was without needing to get orders for it. So my friend, incidentally, very close friend, the one who died of not smoking, was my executive officer, and he said, hey, you got something interesting here. It had just come in. I said, what's that? He said, commanding officer of a Navy transport. So I said, yeah, A.E. Anderson, the AP 111, General A.E. Anderson. So I thought, yeah, that's pretty nice, but probably not. I didn't ever. But I got home and my wife had been on a cruise with me, and she said, well, what's going on? Didn't look at me. She was watching TV. I said, oh, I got orders that Ready Reserve, in command of a Navy transport. Oh, really? Is that a big ship? I said, yeah, it's a big ship. It's about 30,000 tons, crew of 500, and carry 8,000 or 9,000 troops. She stopped and turned her head up and looked at me and said, would they let you be captain of a ship like that? Wives or something else.
So did you go on to be the captain of that ship? No?
No, I've never called it. We never had another crisis. And I don't know whether the AP 111 was ever finished and equipped or what.
So what that was all about was saying that if there ever is a crisis and we need to build this ship, then you were going to be running this ship.
Everything was pre-assigned, the whole crew. And it was a good idea. But I'm just as glad that it didn't come into being.
Of course. So after your experience, well, I guess one other question I have about World War II, your service in World War II. Once you would escort a convoy down to Guantanamo Bay, how long would you stay there? And would you just go back on your own, or did you escort any other?
3 to 5 days, go back on our own.
So you just go
We
back.
didn't go back with the other ships that came down with us. We just turned around and highballed back to New York.
Nonstop.
Non-stop.
And then how long were you in New York before you would escort another?
Oh, it's hard for me to recall. Not terribly long. 5 or 6, maybe a week would be a fairly reasonable average. And that'd give us time if we had anything needed to do, any mechanical stuff needed fixing.
So on average, your total cycle of duty time was from the time you left Staten Island to Guantanamo Bay and back would have been
3 weeks.
3 weeks then. Okay. So you were down. Okay, you said you were down in Guantanamo Bay for 3 to 5 days, not 35.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I got you. Okay.
3 to 5.
3 to
right.
5 days. Okay.
That's where what in the hell was that stuff? I remember the old Forester was 2 1/4. I thought that was pretty good, but this other was my favorite drink. And it was $1.40 a bottle, a fifth, Boy, taxes,
Yeah.
taxes. Whew.
Well,
I would like to say the Navy, everything I had to do with it, I was proud of it. I didn't. I told you in the letter, but I had 2 remarkable things. Chester W. Nimitz was one. We became very close friends, and I invited him. He came down here in the 1970s.
this is Admiral Nimitz's son.
Yeah,
Chester
his
Nimitz
son.
Jr.
And charmed Nimitz. They made him an honorary member of the faculty. God, he's pictures all over the newspaper. And the other one, little did I dream, little guy, it was Sunday. And I'd been out, I had just gotten up and gotten myself together. I think probably 9 o'clock or so. And the quarterdeck watch came in the wardroom and said, "Captain, there's a captain and 2 lieutenants and 2 warrant officers coming down." We were in dry dock. I said, "All right, get out there." And I was ready for it. You know who the captain was? Hyman Rickover. And they did a very thorough exam of our ship and examined me, and I got a commendation, which is now framed and hangs in my office at home. It's the best ship of our type inspected. Hyman Rickover was a super nice little guy. Then, of course, he got that reputation for being mean and short-tempered and all, and he had been discriminated against. He didn't tell me, somebody else did. Naval Academy because he was Jewish.
Really?
Yeah. But that was an experience that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Well, so after your service during World War II, you said you later served in the Korean War.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that? How'd that come about for you?
I had gone up to see a friend at the University of Michigan. And I remember I saw Ohio State in Michigan play a football game in a snowstorm. It was terrible. Well, we got away from there and got on, and fortunately the snow quit and I was able to get home. But I got home late. And I can't remember whether I flew or took a train. I could have taken either one. Probably took a train. And I got back down here, and I was staying in a beautiful home, widow lady, with 2 other guys. We each had our own room. And I went in. It was about 10 o'clock. I turned the light on. I thought, what the hell's that? And somebody had taken a pillow, puffed it up, and leaned an envelope, large 8 by 10 envelope on it. It was my orders to active duty. And that's when I left. In late 1950, I went to San Diego and reported aboard the O'Brien, the DD-725, as chief engineer. And it was good service, good fellows. Chester was just wonderful. he liked to play tennis, and I was the only officer in 18 who played tennis. So every time we'd hit shore where there was a tennis court, off we went, no matter what else was going on. And so we got to be good friends. I told you 20 years later I called him. He was chairman, CEO of the Perkin-Elmer Corporation. Have you ever heard of that? It's on the stock market today. And yeah, I'll tell you this, then I'll shut up. I called, my last child was in Nimitz Junior High, and I told them that when they were there, I'd have Chester come down. Well, anyway, I called, asked for Mr. Nimitz, got a female answer, Mr. Nimitz's office. May I speak with him, please? He's in conference. May I take a message? And I said, well, my name is John Graham, and he and I served together during the Korean War. Pause. This is Mrs. John Graham. Just a moment, please. Next thing I knew, he says, God damn, where are you? He was very dynamic. And he came down. And we had about 3 days, I guess, that were great. I brought him down. I worked for the bank, First National Bank, and we had a beautiful executive dining room then, and just had a delightful time. He thoroughly enjoyed it.
Did you ever make it up to Fredericksburg, Texas?
I still want to, but I guess I won't. I'm going to be 85 this month.
Well, the Nimitz Museum, the Museum of the Pacific War, is
I
great.
I know it must be. I met the Admiral. Just a delightful gentleman. I don't know whether I told you Chester was 6'4". His mother and sister were both taller than his dad.
Oh my God.
His dad was about, I'd say, 5'10" or 11, and they were both over 6. Isn't that wild? I couldn't believe it. But he was a very pleasant, nice. He told us a joke, and I thought, what a nice guy. Yeah, I had made the arrangements in the Officers Club at Hunters Point, San Francisco, big Navy base, and we were in the Officers Club Friday evening in a private room at the back of the club. I mean, sounded like there were 1,000 people outside. Glasses clinking, people laughing, stomping, moving furniture. All of a sudden, shoo, down to nothing. Dead silence. You could hear the footsteps. The Admiral had arrived and walked in, and when he got inside our room, closed the door, the racket started again. I thought, what a tribute.
Wow, no kidding. Well, tell me about, you mentioned before we started the interview some of your experiences aboard ship during the Korean conflict. You mentioned, getting fired upon. Tell me about that.
Oh. Well, I'll tell you that first, and I'll tell you the worst experience I had. I was officer deck. We were patrolling Wonsan Harbor, which was in North Korea, and it was a pretty day. I was out on the open bridge when I just happened to be looking over to the east, and I saw a puff of smoke. Then I saw a little dot moving through the sky toward us, and I knew it was a projectile. And I say again, I don't know why the hell I wasn't scared to death, but I wasn't. I called for general quarters and captain to the bridge, and it came over and hit and exploded about 1,000 yards ahead of us. No, they didn't fire another one. But the other thing that was the most distressful thing I've seen, unfortunately it wasn't terrible. I had just taken over as officer of the deck, and we were in patrol land where we had 8 destroyers arrayed around usually 1, sometimes 2 aircraft carriers. And the destroyer ahead of me, the Walk, DD-723, took a mine. Boy, terrible. I mean, terrible. blew up. But I've told you about it. Nobody was hurt, amazingly, and it didn't sink. That's the only thing, really. We were very rarely the object of any shore batteries. I used to think, what a waste of time this is, but if we're here, we'll keep them out of it, and that's what we did.
Well, when the shore battery fired at you guys on your first description there, you said they didn't fire again. Did you guys take action against the shore battery?
Not one bit, no.
So it just fired one shell?
It fired once and did not fire again.
Why do you think that
I
is?
haven't any idea. Well, we were in Songjin, which was a little farther north than Wonsan. They're both are big, beautiful natural harbors. And nobody ever fired at us. That's the one shot out of months of patrolling that we got fired at us. I'll tell you, war in general and anybody's specific experience is going to be filled more with unexplainables than it is good telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a friend who was on in the Marine Corps, and gosh, what a terrible thing that was. I'm trying to think now. I can't think of the great place where all the butchery was. They killed a bunch of us, and we killed a bunch of them. The last big fight.
Okinawa?
That was it. Yeah, thank you. And he got some kind of a medal, and he made it to the last day. He got shot in the leg on the last day. Jim Eagleton is his name. He's a very successful lawyer. You know Jim?
We interviewed him already.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, Jim really had some ugly stories to tell. But I will say this with no apology. I would not have considered being in the Marines any more than I would have considered being in either the Air Force or the Navy Air. All I could see was getting shot down in one and getting shot at in the other. And so I made my contribution, such as it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking back on your experiences, what do you think? I mean, was there anything about the war or war in general that kind of affected your view on life or affected you as a person?
Interesting thought. I have never been able to understand why the Japanese came after us the way they did. I remember I heard it over the radio when I was doing my homework down at the Sig Alf house at OU that Pearl Harbor had been attacked by the Japanese. And all I think is, my God, you idiots, we'll wipe you out in a week. Well, we didn't quite do that, but we wiped them out, and they should have known that. So I can't comment. And Hitler, who knows? The occurrence of a man like that, once in a million years. I just realized, having read about the 90th book or commentary on Hitler and the World War II, that Goering literally split up with him, fighting him, trying to keep him from invading Russia. Of course, invasion of Russia is what wiped out the Germans.
It was the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Now, where were you in the service?
Actually, I didn't serve in the military.
I was sitting here thinking you weren't quite old enough.
No, I wish I had. I thought about when I was in high school. I thought about going into the Air Force, but I never did it, and I wish now that I'd served.
Well, no sense doing it if you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
I have two boys, and they're, I think, probably older than you are. One of them's 53 and the other one's 51.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't either.
Mm-hmm.
And I was glad.
Mm-hmm. Well, Is there anything we haven't covered here that you'd like to talk about?
No, I just came to tell you what you asked me.
Well, you did that. I appreciate it. I have no further questions. If there's anything you'd like to say in closing, the camera's all yours.
Oh, well, thanks. I think you and Bob, I don't know what Bob had to do with this. You approached him.
He approached me, actually.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Good for him. He's the, what? The leader, small L, of our retired men's group. Very nice guy. And I wasn't sure what he had in mind. But I'm proud of you all for doing this.
Thank you very much.
I have not really had a lot to say, but I've enjoyed it. Of course, I have memorabilia about it, and I still have my uniform. All the gold is turned dark, and I don't know whether I can get it. I'm going to have to try my jacket, see if I can button it. But I love the Navy.
Well, it sounds like you had a pretty distinguished career and you got to meet some pretty fascinating people.
I think so. Nimitz and Hyman Rickover were two pretty hot fellas, and both made great contributions. You know, Hyman Rickover was the father of the nuclear Navy, and he was there a long time. Incidentally, after I was through with the war, I worked for a company here for a short while, not very long, that made valves for the submarines, and went up to the east. And I've been on 3 nuclear subs and 1 ordinary sub. An incredible thing. Have been on an ordinary one. Everything's cramped. You know, a nuclear sub, it's just luxurious because they don't have to store any fuel. I just thought, oh boy, what a deal.
Have you been down to the USS Batfish in Muskogee?
I knew the guy that was responsible for getting it there, but I haven't been, no. But I've been on the same type ship. And well, where was it? I think must have been Norfolk. I went out there on a training duty. Well, bless your heart. Tell me again your name.
My name's Ryan Fairfield.
Ryan Fairfield. How nice. Ryan.
One last question. How did the military impact you in a positive way? I mean, I know for a lot of people that serve in the military, it gave them focus, it gave them drive in their life. How did the military affect you?
Well, it hit me with a mountain of responsibility straight in the face when I was still a kid. And so you either face up to that, or I don't know what. I managed to face up to it. And I remember one thing in my life when I was on that destroyer, never forget it. I felt so sorry. Our senior watch officer, who was a Lieutenant J.G., froze on the bridge, and we were closing with an aircraft carrier. And I had to take the con from him and turn us rather violently away from the carrier to keep us from piling into it. And he even thanked me himself, but he was no longer the senior watch officer. But those things happen, and you do it. I did that again after the war. A group of local reservists took a ship to Haiti, and the skipper, who was not really qualified, froze there while he was headed into a concrete abutment at the pier. And next morning at breakfast, he looked up and said, "Thank you for the help. I really needed it." And that was it.
Wow. Well, I have no further questions, so I appreciate
Okay, Ryan.
your time, and I appreciate
Well,
your service. above all
again,
else.
I am proud of you and your friends.
Well, thank you.
How many others are involved with you?
Well, God only knows how many across the
Oh,
U.S. are
all
doing
right.
this.
I meant only locally.
Oh, just myself and my friend Tony Lupo. We've been doing this as
Okay.
a team for about 5 years, so
No kidding.
it's been a lot of fun.
Good. I bet it
All
has.
right.